Welcome to today's workshop. Today, we're going to talk about how to test Hydrogen applications. And the name of the workshop is Testing with Vitest and Playwright. But I think a more correct title would be How to Test in General in Hydrogen, because I'm going to show examples using, for example, vanilla Node.js without installing any packages. So, yeah. And for those who don't know, what hydrogen is, I'm going to explain for like the 1,000th time now, but it's a good reminder. Hydrogen is simply a remix template to work with Shopify. So I've seen some people online, for example, complaining that, oh, we don't have documentation for testing in Hydrogen. Because if you open the Hydrogen website, you go to the docs, and then on the left sidebar, you can see that we have, where's that? A section called debugging and testing. And then you click here on end-to-end testing. And then all the documentation that we have is how to bypass authentication on your end-to-end tests. And that's it. There's nothing else. There's no recommendation on how to test, where to test, when to test. That's up to you. And then some people complain that, oh, we don't know how to test hydrogen. But in reality, Hydrogen is just a remix template. So you could just search for remix testing on Google or YouTube, and whatever works for remix is also going to work for Hydrogen. There is nothing really special about testing in Hydrogen if you compare to vanilla React or just remix. The only difference that you have on Hydrogen is that when you deploy, you're going to deploy to Oxygen, most likely, which is a worker environment from Shopify. So during runtime, you cannot use stuff from Node. You need to import from Oxygen, which is, I think, based on Cloudflare workers or something like that. But that's during runtime. So if you are here locally writing your tests, you can run Node, you can run all the common testing libraries from React, and that is going to work fine. So if you think there are some resources lacking for Hydrogen, don't worry. You can just search testing React or testing Remix, and that is going to work normally for Hydrogen. Okay, so the first type of test that I wanted to talk about is unit testing. And for this workshop, I'm going to do unit testing just on functions. I'm not going to run unit tests on components. And that's just my opinion. We don't have strong opinions on how to test React applications. Some people like unit testing React components. Some people don't. I'm not a fan because I think it leads to like a peer pressure to create test files for every single React component. And sometimes it takes a long time to create a unit test for React component. So for now, I am not going to use the classic testing library to unit test React components. I'm just going to use Vitest and Node to test simple functions. And before I talk about Vitest, I wanted to talk about an honorable mention here, which is Node.js. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but we have a new Node.js website. It has been up for like a couple of months now, and it's really good. You have now a learning section that you can see like the most common operations that you're going to do on Node. It's pretty neat. And one thing that you can find on the homepage is that if you're using the Node LTS version, you now have a built-in HTTP server, test runner, and a bunch of other goodies. Even worker threads, we have the cluster mode to run a node in parallel, but this is what I wanted to show here. So I can write tests without installing anything? Yes. Let's create one test as an example using vanilla Node.js. So this is just a bare bones Hydrogen application. I just ran the command from the homepage, and that's it. Nothing special about this application here. And I'm gonna zoom in. Can you guys see okay my screen? Or do you want more zoom?
Looks fine.
I'll try to use this zoom. If it's bad, I'll zoom out a little bit. So most of your code is gonna be inside the app folder. Here, I'm just gonna create at the root, which is not ideal, but it's just a quick example. I'm gonna create hello dot test dot, and even though we are using TypeScript on the entire code base, Node doesn't run TypeScript. Until now, maybe in the future, but now it doesn't run. So we need to type hello.test.js. Let me close this a little bit. So there are two imports that you're going to do from Node. The first one is assert. So import assert from Node :assert. Okay. And the other one is test and, oh no, just test, I think. Test from Node test. Okay. So to write our first test, the syntax is very similar. So you can have your test block here, like this, test hello. Okay, I'm gonna accept this suggestion because it is correct, but this is what I wanted to show. The syntax here, the test block is exactly the same as a Vitest block, but the assert is a little bit different. Some people might be used to writing something like this, expect, whoops, not this, expect, okay, something like this, expect, and that's a function, dot, and then whatever other thing you want to do, you can use to be, to equal, and then the other value here. This is the biggest difference from the traditional test runners from Node, vanilla Node.js. You're going to type assert dot and the operation that you want to do. We have equal, we have not equal, we have deep equal if you're comparing like a huge object with nested fields. Since we're just comparing strings here, assert dot equal should be fine. Okay, so how do I run a Node test? Well, there are two main ways. You can type node and then the name of your file. So app hello.test.js, and there you go. We detected one test, it ran, and it succeeded. Another way to run tests is by typing on your terminal node --test. And then it's going to search for a specific file pattern like .spec.js, .test.js, the full file pattern you can find on the official website. And there you go. We found one test and it ran successfully. And the problem here comes with when you want to run TypeScript, for example. We cannot execute TypeScript files natively with Node. You need to install another package for that. So if you want to convert this into a hello.test. Whoops, not delete, rename .ts, one very famous package that you can install to execute TypeScript files is a package called TSX, which stands for TypeScript Execute. And then you're going to run, after you install that package, npx tsx, and then you can pass whatever flag that works on Node for TSX. Here we want to pass the --test flag, and we need to specify another file pattern because by default, Node doesn't look for TS files. And I don't have TSX installed, but npx is gonna download like a copy locally to execute, and then it's gonna delete it. So this should work. And there you go. We have our test running. But then my question here is, well, if I need to install a package anyways, like I need to install TSX to run TypeScript tests, why not just install Vitest, which is the most common test runner? Like I need to install one package anyways, why not install the most famous test runner? And that's what I'm gonna do. But as you can see, you don't need to install anything. By default, you can just use Node, and you could just write your tests in vanilla.js. Typically, you're just importing a file and then running assert.equal on the result. So I think this is fine, but depends on the use case. And I don't want to change anything from tsconfig. I don't know what happened. Let me see. tsconfig. No, let me remove this. I'm also going to remove this test because we're now going to move to Vitest. Okay, delete forever. Fine. So, okay, now let's do the first unit test using the proper tool. We're going to install Vitest. And it's very hard to install Vitest, so pay close attention. If you go to the Vitest website, you click on Get Started, you're going to run this. You're just going to install Vitest as a dev dependency. And that's it. Super hard. So on most of the applications, this should work, but apparently there's a bug on Remix that doesn't allow you to just do this. So for this example here, we're going to have to create a Vitest config file, but most of on the other applications, you shouldn't need to do this. Okay, this is specific to this version of Hydrogen. Maybe they fix it in the future. So we're going to have to write a vitest.config.ts file. So vitest.config.ts. Okay. And the configuration should be similar to the vit.config.ts file that we have on Hydrogen. For those who don't know, the newest versions of Hydrogen is using Vit as like the bundler slash build CLI tool. So the Vitest integration with Vit is pretty nice. Now this file is huge, but don't worry about this. I am going to delete most of the stuff that is here. All I need is this plugins array with tsconfig paths. And that should be enough to work. I can remove all the other configuration. And then I need to add here on top one small thing. Let me go back to the docs, config. I need to add this reference to the types of Vitest on top. So this is the configuration file that we need. Again, you shouldn't have to do this. It's apparently a bug on the latest version of Hydrogen or Remix. I don't know. But it's a small file. So that's it. We have vitest.config at the root. Now, hopefully, we're going to be able to run our first test. So which function am I going to test today? I went here before the presentation and I looked for every function that we have on the lib folder. And we have, where is that function use? Variant, it's here. Okay. Inside the search file from app lib, we have a very cool looking function called URL with tracking params. And I'm going to write a unit test for that. And there's a reason why I chose this function, just a spoiler. So inside lib, we're going to create search.test.ts. Now, again, we have no conventions for testing JavaScript. So some people like having the same file name, but with test in the middle. Some people like having the folder underscore underscore test underscore underscore. I don't like it. I like having the test very close to the original file. So this is what I'm going to do here. Now, to test if Vitest is running, I'm just going to write a very bare bones test here. So we're going to import test and then expect, not from Playwright, but from Vitest. Where is it? Here. Okay. So test. Again, very similar syntax to Node. We have a test block. The first parameter is a string where you name your test. Here, I'm just gonna say that we're testing this function here, URL with tracking params. Okay. The second argument is a callback. Okay, so for now, I'm just gonna say expect true to be true. Hopefully this is gonna work. And to run Vitest locally, if you don't have a script on package.json, which we're gonna do in a couple of seconds, you can type npx Vitest. And by default, if you just write npx Vitest, it's gonna run the test in watch mode. If you wanna run once and that's it, you can type npx Vitest run. And thank God that helped, that worked, so we can proceed. And before we proceed, actually, I'm gonna add something to my package.json to make our lives easier. We can go to the scripts tag inside package.json, and I'm gonna write a new test command. I think I'm gonna do the following. I'm gonna have a test watch as Vitest, and then another one as just test, and it will be Vitest. This way, we have a very explicit command. Whoops, remove the space. We have a very explicit command on the package.json. Okay, so we should be able to go back to the terminal, run npm run, and then the name of the script. Here, I want to run test watch. Let's see if this works. And it works. If you want to exit this mode, you just have to press Q. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is import that function. Import. I think Copilot is correct here. Okay. URL with tracking params. And missing a run in the other package script. Let me see. Did I miss a run here? You mean on the test scripts? I don't think we need a... Oh, yeah. Right. Sorry. On the test, we need a space run. Correct. Thanks. And yeah, to watch the test commands, you can just type Vitest, and we need the run to just run once. Thanks. Okay. And the test that I'm going to write here is actually from the comments that are on top of the search function. Here, they have a JS doc explaining what this function does, and then it shows you an example on how to use it. And if you hover the mouse on top of the function, you're going to read the JS doc. So it says, well, you have a URL, a tracking params, another params object. You call the function, and this is the expected output. So I'm just going to copy this and see if it works. So let me go back here. I'm going to copy this. This should work because it's a documentation that they wrote. Let me just remove this asterisk. Okay. So here we have example.com as the URL. I'm going to rename it to base URL. So we already found something wrong here. The documentation here should be base URL and not URL. So I'm going to update the docs. Okay. Let me see if this is correct. We have the base URL, the tracking params. Okay. Params, term. We have the URL here. And then I'm going to grab the expected output, which is this string right here. And I'm going to say here, expect URL to be this string right here. Okay. Now let's see the results on the terminal. Whoa, hold up. Something's wrong here. Did I mistype my test? Is my test wrong or the function wrong? Let's read why the test failed. We have an assertion error. Okay, this is what we expected. We expected this green text, and we got this one below. So the first thing that we can notice is that we expected the protocol to be defined before the URL. So here we were expecting HTTPS, and we didn't get that. Now, we could either change the function here to add the protocol in the beginning of the URL, or we can just fix like the documentation and don't add the protocol before. And this is what I'm going to do. Because imagine if you're passing here example, but HTTPS colon double slash. If I'm passing this here as the base URL, and then my search function also adds the protocol, then I'm going to have a double protocol. So I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is simply, I'm going to fix again the documentation because the output does not include the protocol. And I am no longer going to expect the URL to include the HTTPS. Okay. But again, we still got another error. And what is this? Apparently, we are passing a parameter, a search term here. This is a string with a space in the middle. And typically, when you're URL encoding a space, you'll get a %20 as an encoded space. And we're not getting that. We're getting a %2520 instead of %20. Now, what is going on here? I spent maybe an hour trying to debug this issue, and I found out that there is a bug on this function, and we're going to fix it. Apparently, there's like a double encoding going on here. We have, oh yeah, is there a pull request to fix this already? Okay, yeah, so thanks, Alberto, for uh, opening up an issue. We found a bug live on a workshop. And there's like a double encoding going on here. We're encoding the term and then also calling on top of that the URL search params. And to fix this, we can just remove the double encoding. For now, I will remove this one here. Okay, I'm gonna save. Now, if we go back to the test, now we're still getting something different here. Instead of getting the %20 as the encoded space, we're getting a plus. Is this correct or wrong? Well, if you're adding a space on a query parameter, like we're doing here, then as far as I know, a space, a plus is a valid space encoded in the URL. So what I'm going to do here is once again, fix the test and the documentation from this function. Here, if we have a search term, we're not getting a %20, we're getting a plus as the space is encoded in the URL. Then I'm going to go back to the test and we're going to change this to a plus, and that should be a valid URL. And there we go. We got a passing test. We found a bug live in a workshop. That's why we write tests. It's rare, but we find bugs during tests. And when that happens, it's a good feeling. So nice. What is the next step from here? We wrote our first unit test. As I mentioned before, you could write unit tests for React components. And if you wanted to do this, you had to install testing library and then integrate that with Vitest, which is easy, but I don't like unit testing React components. I think it's a waste of time most of the time. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a commit real quick so I can clean up my files. I'm going to say add Vitest, and that's it. Okay, next step for testing, and this is my personal preference. One type of test that gives me a lot of confidence is end-to-end testing, especially because these newer tools like Playwright, they have many browsers installed. Like they have, you can run tests on Safari, Firefox, Chromium. You can even run on mobile devices like an iPhone or a specific Android. And I don't know, having this type of tests make me very comfortable and make me sleep well at night, knowing that my code runs on all browsers. So right now I'm going to install Playwright. If you go to the official documentation, the installation is a bit different. Instead of just installing Playwright, you're going to run a script that they have. So I'm going to copy this command from the documentation, go back to the terminal, paste this in here. This is going to take a while because we're also going to install the browsers that Playwright is going to use for the tests. So first question that we get here is where you want to store the end-to-end tests. I like having a folder like tests slash E2E, end-to-end. Okay. I don't want GitHub Actions for now. I want to install the browsers. Okay. I just need to monitor my resources from the computer because I have just 6 GB of empty space, but I think there is enough to install the browsers. Okay. And you can already have like a quick spoiler of how to run the Playwright tests. You can simply type npx playwright test to run the end-to-end tests. And you can write npx playwright test dash dash UI so you can have a Chromium browser spin up on your computer and you can see the tests running. So let's run this to see how it's working. I'm gonna simply paste this on my terminal to see if the generated tests are working. They should be. Okay. Now I'm gonna show you how the UI works if you want to see the tests. Okay, so we have a Chromium going on and we have this window that pops up and we have a couple of configurations here. Like if you go to the top left, can I zoom in? Okay, this is better. You can go to the top left and select which browsers you want your tests to run. For now, yeah, I think I'm gonna choose Firefox and WebKit as well so we can see what's going on. We have one test file that was generated for us, and it's gonna test the Playwright website. Okay, we have a has title test. If we open this up, you can filter by browser. I'm gonna go to WebKit. There you go. We have some actions running before the tests. And then the test is go to the Playwright website and expect the title to be a specific string. And that worked for every single browser. We also have a get started link, which just goes to the documentation. That's it. Okay, so Playwright is running. Let's make it work on our current project. The first thing that I'm going to do, as always, is create a script on package.json to make our lives easier. You can come here. I'm going to create a test called test colon E2E, test colon E2E, to explicitly say that I'm running Playwright and not Vitest. Okay. And I also like creating another one that is very similar, but it's the Playwright test dash dash UI. So we can see that Chromium browser running our tests. And then I'm going to name this test colon E2E colon UI. And I'm missing a comma here. Okay. Now let me go back to the terminal. That should work. I'm now able to run npm run test colon E2E. That should still be working. Okay, nice. Let's remove the test files that were generated for us. I'm gonna go to tests, E2E. Actually, I think I'm gonna leave this just so we can check if our syntax is correct. But I'm gonna delete the tests examples. This is a more complex test. We don't need it. I'm just gonna delete this. Tests examples. Nice. Now we just have this folder. And okay, but before we start writing the tests, there's just one extra configuration that we need to add. And that is, if you don't want to write await page go to http colon slash localhost port 3000, if all you want to do inside Playwright is say, go to the root, and then it knows what is the base URL, you need to change one file. You need to open up Playwright, and then you're going to look for base URL. And there you go. So just uncomment this line, and then I'm going to change this address to just localhost. I know it's the same, but for some reason, the 127 address doesn't work. So I'm going to replace it with localhost. Okay. That should be enough. Now let's write our first test. Let's create this. I'm going to call this smoke, like a general smoke test, so we can have a general sense if the entire application is working or not. So I'm just going to say smoke.test.ts. I'm going to copy the imports from this file, add to smoke. Then I'm going to say test. The name of this test is smoke test. Okay. And then we have a callback, as always. And one small difference from Vitest is that on Playwright, you need to say on this callback that it is async, and then you can destructure some arguments from this callback. We have a bunch of arguments here. We have page. We also have request if you want to test API endpoints. For now, we want to test a page. So I'm going to destructure page from here. And then I'm just going to say await page dot go to. And then I'm going to grab this recommendation and replace it with slash. Okay. And I'm just going to add a simple expect here. Expect. I'm going to say page dot, I'm going to grab the URL dot to be. And I think we don't need the full path here. I think I can just do this. And as far as I know, we also need an await or not. Not actually. I don't think we need an await. Okay, let me remove that. I'm going to, once again, run the npm run test, but this time I'm going to run the UI test. So we're going to see that Chromium browser running our tests. Open this up, zoom again. I'm going to go to smoke test, go here. I just want Chromium, to be honest, so this can go faster. Let me run. And that didn't, okay, yeah. We need the server running, of course. Right now we get an error saying that the connection was refused because the server is not running. So I'm going to go open up another terminal tab. I'm going to run npm run dev to run our Hydrogen server. That should be working. Let me go back to Playwright. I'm going to hit run. Let me see. Oh, yeah. I think we need the full path here for some reason. But yeah, the test here is working in the sense that we visited the homepage, but I'll just change this to be localhost to see if it works. I'll go back to Chromium. That should work now. Okay. Now we have a test that is passing. And you might be thinking, okay, so now I need to write the entire test to like find the element in the screen, click on it, and then expect a text inside or something. And this will be a huge test because we're going to test the entire application. So do we need to write the tests by hand? And no, you don't. We have an amazing thing called CodeGen from Playwright. And this is what we're going to do. To run the CodeGen, you can simply type npx playwright CodeGen, and then the URL that you want to add to run the code generation. Now, I don't like running Playwright directly, so I'm just going to add this as another script from our package.json. I'm going to open that up, package.json. I'm going to add maybe test E2E CodeGen, maybe. And I'm missing a double string. Okay. So I created another script. Let me see if this is correct. Playwright, CodeGen, and then the URL that we want to run the code generation. Seems okay. So I'm going to go back. And now I'm going to run npm run test E2E colon CodeGen. Let's see if this works. You should see two tabs open up. The first one is Chromium with your application running. And the other one is like a code editor with a bunch of weird buttons here on top. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Nah, not really mobile responsive. Okay. Let me see this tab if I can zoom in. Okay. No, this is fine. So as you can see, the record button is already on. So if I go to my Chrome tab and I click on anything, like, for example, I want to scroll down, I want to check all the products. So I'm going to go to feature products. You can see that the tests are being generated here. So the line that was generated was a get by role. It found a link with the name featured. This is exactly what we wanted. Now inside this page, I want to get the first product. So I'm just going to click on men's screw neck. Okay. I also want to maybe change the size and the color. I'm going to change, and then here. And I want to add to cart. So you can click here, add to cart. And another cool thing is that we have buttons here to write assertions. So this generates like the flow on the screen to click and to fill inputs, but it also generates the assertions. So you can just click here. For example, I want to check if this item was correctly added to the cart. So I can click on assert visibility, click here. And then as you can see, we looked for a list item with a filter of man screw neck. And then this needs to be visible. Okay. Another thing that I want to see if it's visible or not is I want to check if we have like the correct size and the color that we selected. So I'm going to click here once again, click on size medium. Okay, so the size medium must be visible because I clicked on it. And the color also needs to be visible. So I'm going to click here, color. Okay, expect color ocean to be visible. And I'm going to click continue to check out. And we can stop recording. Stop. Okay. Now this doesn't save on any file, so do not close this tab, okay? You're gonna click here on copy, and then you're gonna generate your file inside VS Code. So I can go back to smoke.test, and then I'm going to replace all of this with, actually I can replace the entire file with the text that was generated by the CodeGen application. And yeah, I think I can close this now. Let me close on the terminal. All right. And that's it. It was generated automatically by the CodeGen script. I didn't have to do anything. Now, of course, this is not ideal because we're specifically looking for a men's crew neck product. We're not getting the first product, we're getting specifically this one. And we're looking specifically for a medium and ocean variant of that product. And I just need to do one quick fix here, remove the localhost 3000. So this is not ideal, but you can use this as a reference and we can test to see if it's running or not, if it's passing. So I'm going to type npm run test e to e UI. Let's see if the generated test works. Again, zoom in a little bit. I'm going to go to smoke test. I just want to run this one. Let's see. Apparently it passed. So you can click on test and you can see like an entire overview of what happened during the test. So you can see we went to the home page. Here we clicked on featured, and then on the featured page we clicked on the first product. We selected the size, selected the color, we added to cart, and then we checked if it is visible, the size medium, the color ocean, and then we clicked on checkout. You could also check, for example, if you were redirected correctly to a checkout page by adding something like this: await, expect page dot URL dot to include to page dot URL to. There's no to include here. I'm sure there was earlier. To, let me see, to have URL. Let me see if I'm doing something wrong. URL. No. Do I need an awaiting side? Yeah, let me check the docs real quick. There should be a function.
Continue.
Oh, yeah. Maybe to contain. Okay, yeah. That's perfect. I always mess up my head when it comes to like includes or contain. It's different on every language. And apparently I don't need the await here. Let me remove. So I just want to check if we are being redirected to like a checkout domain. Here we're using the checkout from Shopify. So, and I think we're being redirected to a test checkout. If I go back to my application, localhost 3000, I think it's a test checkout. Yeah, demostar.mock. So for now, I'm just going to check if there is a checkout inside the URL. I already added this. I should be able to just rerun the test inside here. Let me rerun. Okay, expect to contain, yes. This works. Now, initially, my plan was to fix this test and write like to find the first product, get the product name, check their URL to see if it changes once you click on another variant, but I don't think we have time. So I'm just going to move to the final step of this presentation, which is API testing. Now, I don't know if all of you here are aware, but Remix is a full stack framework, meaning that if you go to the app folder inside the routes, every single route here is supposed to be a page, right? But as an example, if you go to this account file, where's the React component? There's nothing here. Apparently, there's just a loader. And yeah, it's just a loader. So on Remix, we have something called the loader function and the action functions. They are responsible for dealing with HTTP requests. The loader runs all the HTTP GET requests, and the action runs all the other verbs like post, put, delete. And if you have a file inside the routes folder that doesn't have a UI, by default, it's going to become just a REST API, an endpoint. So you can do whatever you want here. So as an example, I'm going to create a promotions uh, endpoint. So we know if there is, I don't know, a promotion going on the website. Maybe we have a mobile app that needs to consume this REST endpoint. And to create a new route, you can go to the routes folder. You can type new file. I'm just going to say promotions.tsx. And if you create a new route, apparently you need to stop the server. So I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to just type a very simple loader function. So I'm going to say export function. Actually, it's async function loader. And yeah, this looks good. So inside your loader, you need to return JSON. And this JSON typically is imported from remix-react or node, but we are assuming that you're running this on Oxygen from Shopify. So you need to import this function from remix-oxygen from Shopify. And this should be enough. Let me see. We're returning a JSON. It's an object with the promotions, and it's just an array. Okay. So I'm going to run my Hydrogen server again, npm run dev. Let's see if this endpoint is working. I'm going to go back to the Hydrogen. I'm going to go to /promotions, and it is working. As you can see, we got a JSON back instead of HTML. So how do we write a test for this? Because many people think that Playwright is only used to test like your UI. So because the main selling point of Playwright is that you can easily test on Safari, on Firefox, on Chromium. So do I need to install another testing library to test a REST endpoint? And thank God, no. You can just keep using Playwright. So I'm going to go back to my tests folder. We have the smoke test. Now I'm going to create the promotions test. Promotions.test.ts. And then I'm going to copy this overall structure from the smoke test. The only difference here is that inside your test, instead of using the page, you're going to get the request from the callback function from Playwright. So you can simply type, whoops, let me write this up, const response. You can do an await request.get, and then whatever REST endpoint you're expecting. Here we want the /promotions. You can also check the status of the response. We're going to do that. Now I want to check the JSON that we're getting back. So you can type, yeah, that seems correct. So this is the syntax. You type response dot and whatever you want to grab from the response. Here we're grabbing the status, checking if it's okay, 200. And now we're checking here if the JSON is exactly this one. And if I go back to promotions, it should be the same. It's Black Friday, biggest sale of the year with an exclamation. Okay, Christmas, get your gifts here. All right, seems correct. So I have my server running. I still have my Chromium browser running. So I'm going to rerun. No, not actually rerun this. I'm going to go to promotions.test. I'm going to run that. And that was fast. 15 milliseconds. If you go here, as you can see, there's no page on top because it's just a REST endpoint. So you don't see anything here on top, but you can see that we did a get on /promotions. We expected it to be, to have a status of 200 and the JSON. So there's no visual aspect on a REST endpoint, but yeah, you can see that it works. And I think that's pretty much it. Like an overall view of how to test Hydrogen. This is my personal preference of testing. I like testing functions, especially functions that are important. Maybe you have like a recommendation algorithm. Sure, go test that. You're going to write a unit test. You can use vanilla Node.js or Vitest. And for the UI, my personal preference is to run Playwright and do end-to-end testing, especially because it's very common to find a bug on Firefox and Safari. So if you have both running, you can check if there is, I don't know, an HTML tag that doesn't render properly on a different browser. And you can also test API endpoints without installing Supertest, for example. You can just keep using Playwright. And that's it. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have extra questions.